Hi, everybody. I'm here to talk about part one of Peter Jackson's three-part The Beatles Get Back docu-series. And wow, let me start by saying I got hardly any sleep. Why? Because here on the East Coast, the first part dropped at 3 a.m., and I was not going to uh, get up at 3 a.m. I mean, I am an early person, but not 3 a.m. I'm an early person in the sense of 6 o'clock in the morning. I like to get up. So I thought that I would go to bed at midnight the night before and get up at 6 a.m. and get maybe a 6 hour sleep. Didn't work that way. I was as excited as a child on Christmas Eve, waiting to open up his presents. So I kept waking up, rolling around, and finally at about 4 o'clock, after not really getting much sleep, really, I decided, screw it, I'm going for it. Let's watch it. So, I went in and watched it. And after the first time that I viewed it, I did a live stream, and I appeared something like 7 o'clock in the morning Eastern to talk about it for like a half an hour with a few people. And then I decided to watch it a second time to make this what I'm going to call my, I guess, official video, official review, my official feelings and weigh-in about this, where I tell you how I feel about it. All right, well, first of all, Peter Jackson did a fantastic job, and this is only part one of the three-part series. The first part runs approximately, I say approximately, 2 hours and 25 minutes, roughly, or maybe it's 2:24, something like that. So I spent like roughly 5 hours with this. And he did a great job, Peter Jackson did. And we're talking about, first of all, of course, the visual quality is phenomenal. How he was able to take the 16 millimeter footage and make it look like it was shot just yesterday, and beautiful colors that pop out. It's amazing what technology can do, I guess, when you wait long enough, too. Also, I don't know if everybody knows this, because some people are already talking to me in my comments complaining about the audio not always matching the visuals. And the reason for that is, some people may not know, the audio Nagra reels were running all the time and capturing all the audio, but the cameras would turn off here and there for the picture. So sometimes you'd have excess audio and no visuals to go with it. So I guess Peter Jackson and his team had to kind of compensate by using maybe different shots or backs of heads to put in there when the audio would run out. And I think he did a great job. And once in a while, you get some subtitles, because there are certain portions that are louder than others, and certain portions maybe you can't make out the dialogue as well. So there's some narration or narration in the form of subtitles. How's that to try to recoup? Not narration. I'm sorry, folks, but like I said, I'm still tired. I didn't get any sleep, and it's not going to be any better the next night, I don't think. But anyway, So anyway, let's talk about actually what's in this. Part one began with a surprise, I thought. I didn't expect this. It has a montage, kind of runs down the Beatles' career up to the point of January 1969. And at first I was like, oh no, I said, why do we have to sit through this? No, I'm anxious to get into the Get Back material. But then I realized, this is actually very handy for newcomers. One of my big desires here and hopes, if you will, is that there are going to be new generations of Beatle fans, young people possibly interested in the group because of this documentary on Disney Plus. So it helps to have a quick course in the Beatles history. And I don't know how long it runs in the beginning, because I didn't time it, but I think it's well under 10 minutes. And to go from like 1956, John Lennon with the Quarrymen, and then asking Paul to join his band in 57, and then getting George and then Ringo, and going through everything, the popularity in the UK, and then coming over to the United States and taking over the world and doing A Hard Day's Night and Help, and then getting into the psychedelia era and all of that stuff after they stopped touring, and going into when they go to meet the Maharishi, and then finally doing the White Album. I mean, it's amazing how fast that goes, but yet you get an idea of everything if you're not familiar. And it brings us up right to the present day of January 69, when the Beatles are assembled at Twickenham Studios, a big, giant film studio that looks like an oversized warehouse, where they are going to try to do a TV special, and they have only a few weeks to do this because Ringo Starr on January the 24th has to do a film, The Magic Christian. So they got to get this done. And Ringo says at the beginning, he thinks it's only going to be a couple of weeks he'll be able to get this done. Little did they know some of the problems they'd have. They don't really have songs for this thing. They have to kind of write the songs almost as they go, unless they have anything laying around. So yeah, that montage at the beginning of the Beatles sets up the situation. I liked in the beginning how we get IDs for everybody. You see Dennis O'Dell, from Apple. It says Dennis O'Dell. Michael Lindsay Hogg, who's the director, he's identified with his name. Mal Evans identified. Glyn Johns, producer. George Martin, of course, the Beatles' longtime producer. Everybody who appears is identified, including the Beatles themselves, in case you didn't know who they were. So I like that. And I took some notes the second time around. Not going to be in the most strict order here, probably be all over the place. I noticed not only did we have Yoko Ono present for some of these sessions, but George Harrison had a few of his Hare Krishna friends present to sit on the sidelines and watch some of the action at Twickenham. Not sitting with the Beatles like Yoko did in the circle, but there you go. Everyone thinks that John Lennon was so strung out on heroin. I noticed that he's, at least in this chapter, it doesn't really show. He seems pretty up overall and pretty healthy overall and with it, if you will. So I don't know if we have more to see of John during his phase of when he was going through heroin. But it doesn't show much, if at all, in this chapter. Now I'll say that some of the songs that we get here, they're only really snippets of a lot of songs, A lot of people for years, myself included, have heard the bootlegs albums of the Twickenham sessions. And we have stuff here like, it's billed here as On the Road to Marrakesh, which is known as Child of Nature, that John did, which became Jealous Guy. We get a little snippet of that. We have other songs that will appear during the course of this. Some of the ones I wanted to mention here is like Taking a Trip to Carolina, which is a Ringo Starr song that I didn't know about. Richard Starkey composition. We're trying to work on Taking a Trip to Carolina. And then you have Give Me Some Truth, the version working with the Beatles that Lennon would eventually record on his own for his Imagine album. Then you have, of course, Another Day, which is the Paul and Linda single that came out in 1971. You get Paul at the piano singing a little bit of Another Day, which is a short moment but sweet. Then you have All Things Must Pass, where the George's song, which he'd record on his own after the split. And what I like in that one is they're all working on it. John's at the piano, and I like that John gives George a word in there, or a lyric. There's a line in there that George had, the wind can blow the clouds away, and John says you should use mind. It's more like psychedelic. And so George changes it to mind, which is really nice. And there's a lot of that collaboration going on here. You can see them collaborating. Indeed, I would say, I always joke around, Paul McCartney seems like he's taking credit a lot for writing so many of John's songs and having a big hand in them. Well, he really helps out a lot on Don't Let Me Down. He's helping them with the bridge part a lot when they do Don't Let Me Down, which is great to see. And, 99% of this footage or more has never been seen before, of course. There's a little bit from Let It Be, but very little, and whatever it exists here is much better quality than Let It Be ever was. So I like the way the film is also set up day by day. You have like this calendar, and that'll appear, and you'll see the first day. I think the first day is January, I want to say 3rd, perhaps. I don't know if it's 2nd or 3rd, but anyway, the first day that they actually start working, they'll do about, as Peter Jackson puts it, about 20 minutes 15, 20 minutes of each day in there, something like that. And then after the segment is over, we go back to the calendar, and an X is over the date. We go to the next the next square on the calendar, and we continue. At first, when the Beatles start, they try out some early songs. They do songs that they did together that John and Paul wrote, either together or maybe Paul by himself. Some of them, stuff like Just Fun. They do a little bit of that. Because I Know You Love Me So. Very little bit of Thinking of Linking. Won't You Please Say Goodbye? And of course, One After 909, which is the one that they wind up revisiting, because they don't have really songs here really that are fully done or ready to go, and they're going to have to make them up as they go along or build on them. So they resort to some early songs at first. That doesn't really pan out right. Now, I love stuff like little things like on January 6th, for example, Ringo comes in, he says, good morning. And he says, I won't lie, I'm not too good. They probably had rough nights and stuff. Even Glyn Johns makes suggestions, which I was surprised by. Glyn Johns actually makes suggestions to Don't Let Me Down, a way that the Beatles could sing together on it, which is interesting. And later on, Glyn Johns makes some suggestions too, which I'll get to. Now, by January 7th, you have Paul doing his first, I'll call it, tinkering around for what would become Get Back. He's just there strumming away and trying to come up with something, and he gets the genesis of Get Back, which is a highlight. And I notice also on that day, January 7th, there are talks about possible breaking up. They're having problems in this. One thing people were concerned about was whether this was going to be a whitewash. Was Peter Jackson going to all of a sudden make it look like they always got along and everything was happy? I'm happy to say no, it's not a whitewash, but it's just an honest account of what happened day by day here, and the film doesn't lie. So Peter Jackson used stuff that has little hints of them. Like, they're not getting the material they want here. They're not really very motivated. There's on January 7th, there's like a dialogue where they're really like completely unmotivated except for Paul. And we know the story how Paul, and thank God Paul stepped up to try and get these guys excited about this. And at first there's not much excitement, and he's saying, come on, we got to do it. And they talk about Brian Epstein and how since Brian Epstein died, there's been a problem here, and nobody's here to push us, And George says on January 7th, maybe we should have a divorce. And then I think John jokes around, well, who's going to get the children? Stuff like that. But later on, Ringo says on the next day, January 8th, he says, we've gotten a bit grumpy for the last 18 months. He's talking to somebody. Then he's saying how everything we do has always got to be the best. They always expect the best. And Michael Lindsay Hogg is really great in this. He's really trying also to motivate the Beatles. He has his own idea what he wants to do. He hopes he can get the Beatles to perform some kind of wonderful, lavish live concert somewhere, somewhere out there in the world. And they're not very inspired to do so at this point, And that's the thing. The Twickenham sessions are known to be where the problems lie. Winter of Discontent really is in the Twickenham sessions, because in parts 2 and 3, as we'll see, once they move to the Apple office basement and whatnot, and once they start doing music down there, recording more properly, and get Billy Preston into the act, and they go on the roof in part 3, things get a lot more upbeat. But this is what I like, is it's accurate, and it does show you how they're not really feeling it, for the most part, except for Paul. And there is, of course, the famous January 6th row with Paul and George, the famous I'll play whatever you want me to play, or I won't play at all if you don't want me to play thing that goes on. But there's more context to it here. And it's funny, as it appears in Let It Be, I always sided with Paul. And I still do, really, in the sense that I feel like, if Paul has a song and he wants it to be a certain way, and George wants to play the guitar a certain way, I've always felt on Paul's side in that it's his song, he should have it the way he wants. But here, with more footage of it, and not just cut short and choppy as it is in Let It Be, you realize that I kind of feel more for George. I kind of feel more sorry for George here. George is in a better spirits in that scene than I thought. He seems like he's really just taking it pretty good, or just trying to work it out with Paul. Paul's the one getting very pressured in that scene, I think, which is I like how we see Paul when he doesn't really want to talk about this on camera, and he says, I don't know if I want to continue this with the camera on. He gets up, he has to take a walk. I think he gets a piece of chewing gum, sits down again. He's very fidgety. And this row actually occurs during Don't Let Me Down and Two of Us, which I used to think it was during like I've Got a Feeling. I think that's the way it comes across, as in, if I remember, in the Let It Be film that Michael Lindsay Hogg did. I'm not really, I don't know if I'm remembering that exactly right. All right, so yeah, and then also from January 8th, Michael Lindsay Hogg says to John Lennon, he says, Paul and you are not getting along as well as you did, right? He kind of like talks to him, and maybe this will help, he says. And John kind of agrees, yeah, maybe this will help or something. So the only reason I'm mentioning these negative bits is because it just shows you that although we still see that when they really on together, they still play well together and they're friends to the end, they're having problems. And I've heard from a lot of people who are in bands, and they say whenever you're in a band, these kinds of disagreements and problems are going to happen anyway. Just that we don't usually get to see it with the Beatles, when they're in the studio and stuff. Another thing I'll say here, by January 9th, Linda arrives, Linda Eastman. I think Linda is really, attractive here. I think this is her at her best, if you will. I just feel that way about it. And she comes in and takes some photographs. And on January 9th, there's scenes with like Paul McCartney working on verses for his song, the classic Long and Winding Road, and Mal Evans, who is really present throughout this. You see Mal Evans playing the anvil again on Maxwell Silver Hammer, and I like that part when Paul says, "Hey, Mal, would you go out and get us a hammer and an anvil? Just like, go out and get us a cup of coffee. Go out and get us a hammer and anvil, And he has to do that, and he's kind of a gopher. And you see a lot of people bringing them coffee and tea, I guess, and food. Mal Evans also is suggesting words to help Paul out on Long and Winding Road, which is interesting. There's a moment that I love from January 9th when Linda arrives, and she says how much she likes Ringo, and Michael Lindsay Hogg also says Ringo's got a good heart, and says Linda says she feels her most relaxed around Ringo Starr. I think that's a wonderful little moment. Also, a lot of people were wondering whether we were going to have the controversial bit where Paul still hasn't gotten the words to Get Back, so he sings the song Commonwealth, and the Pakistani song also as part of the Get Back bit. And it's controversial, however, it's handled wonderfully here in context. It talks about Enoch Powell and how, it's really put into perspective, so it's not objectionable. The way it's in the film is handled very well, that kind of sensitive issue, so it's done really good. I love the bit when they're going through, she came in through the bathroom window and John and Paul are like goofing around together. That's great. We get Susie Parker, and I'm glad I can call it Susie Parker now, which I always have according to the Sweet Apple Tracks bootleg, because when the songs are listed and you see them in the corners listed, Susie Parker is listed as Parker, so I'm happy about that. And there's a wonderful, wonderful bit here with Let It Be, when Paul is fine-tuning Let It Be, and we have Linda present, and we have John and George, all of them working together to try to make it something really good. And that's another song that I was thinking of, that Glyn Johns makes suggestions. Glyn Johns actually suggests how it should go, the music, and Paul seems like he's open to it. So I'm really digging that, It just goes to show you never know who's really involved in songs, helping each other. It could be one of the Beatles that never got credit for helping the other, or could have been somebody, could be the guy bringing your tea or something, for all you know. And on January 10th is the date when George quits the Beatles. Now, there's no footage really of what happened to make George want to quit. there was a wonderful interview with Peter Jackson on the Things We Said Today podcast, and he says, you know, Peter Jackson thinks that George just started to feel like he was overwhelmed, maybe, and that he had problems at home. Even he doesn't think it was because of his work life that he quit. I beg to differ, and I'm sure he had problems too going on at home. But the way it's presented in the movie here is that we don't really know exactly why. There's nothing leading up to it. There's just on the last day you got George sitting there, kind of like by himself, looking a little lonely, while John and Paul are really having a good time, and they're kind of like telling him again, Paul in particular, how to play and what he should do and try it this way and, you know, so on. And then all of a sudden it's lunchtime and he says, I'm leaving the band. That's it. And he's like, when? And he says, now. And that's it. And you don't really see anything. They don't have footage. This camera stopped. So you don't see anything else. You don't see anything before to cause this, you know, and you don't see anything in the aftermath, really, the immediate aftermath. So that's the only thing. You know, as it appears in the movie, you almost don't know what happened. You know, so apparently the way it comes off is in the movie, whatever's true. We'd heard that John Lennon and George Harrison had words, and that John talked down to George off camera, and that's why he wound up leaving. But as it appears in the movie, when if you didn't know when you're just watching the movie, you would think that George is just starting to feel out of place, and he just couldn't take it anymore. He just wanted to go. He didn't feel he could maybe be around the Lennon and McCartney dynamic at that point. I don't know. That's how it comes off in the movie. So anyway, I really enjoyed this, but I find this to be essential viewing. Of course, if you're a Beatles fanatic like me, if you love the Beatles, you have to see this. You have to eventually own this. This is something you got to see. However, I want to say, to try to give just a little bit of, as I try to do, be fair and give a little bit of criticism. Not criticism, that's the wrong word here. It's, you know, the negative side of this is that, like I said, the Beatles were not happy at Twickenham. That comes through. They don't think it sounds right. It's not conducive for sound. It's not the right place to rehearse or to even record anything or film anything. They don't like it. And that comes through. So I'm glad that it comes through. And it's not just a party and everything's phony happiness all the time. So it's interesting for people who are really into the Beatles and interested in learning and seeing what really happened. However, I'm thinking about people that hopefully will see this. Hopefully people, you know, maybe 7 or 8 year olds, 10 year olds that say, hey, you know, mom and dad, let's check this out. And I was hoping they'd be into the Beatles from this, which is possible, right? We used to have the anthology 26 years ago that got newbies into the Beatles. We had Rock Band that got new people into the Beatles. We had the Beatles 1 CD, all different catalysts to get people interested in the band. But I'm thinking, if I'm a 7, 8, 10-year-old kid, 12-year, and I'm watching part 1, I think I'd find it a little boring in places, to be honest with you, for them. And I'm wondering if they would say, oh, I'm going to go ahead and I can't wait to see part 2 and 3. Because the best is definitely yet to come with this. I should also mention, I'm sorry, a little note here, I forgot. Maureen, Ringo's wife, Maureen, appears at the end. She comes to visit as well. So you see Maureen in this part. But yeah, back to what I was saying. It doesn't really inspire return visits. I mean, for me personally, I'm sure when I get this on home video one day, on Blu-ray or whatnot, I'll eventually get to the point where I want to have a day where I'll watch the whole thing, you know, the whole 8 hours in a row, a marathon. However, after seeing the part 1 twice, as amazing, historically important, and fascinating as it is as a fan, I'm more interested in seeing parts 2 and 3, if you know what I'm trying to say. Because this is kind of dour at times, and it's not a lot of fun once you get, you know, other than the, you know, just the novelty of, wow, I never saw that before, you know, that kind of thing. But hey, look, it's essential. It's essential. And I guess that's what I could say. I'm just wondering if it's going to make newbies, young people say, hey, mom, dad, you know, hey, can you buy me a whole set of Beatles albums? I don't know. That remains to be seen. But anyway, yeah, this is essential viewing. Great job by Peter Jackson, and I thank you.